Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan, and Congressman Jordan is also the author of a brand new book, which is out next week, called Do What You Said You Would Do, which we'll get to in just a minute. Congressman, welcome back to the show.
Good to be with you, Lindsay. Just when you think it can't get any worse, we find out the FBI, as we speak, the FBI is spying on parents, as you rightly said, categorizing parents who are showing up at school board meetings. This is scary what they're doing.
So what's next here? What are the next steps for you all?
Well, we're going to continue to ask questions. Look, this memo went out on October 20th, one day before Merrick Garland came in front of our committee and testified. So this memo goes out doing exactly what we just described. And the next day when we asked Merrick Garland, what's going on? Are FBI agents showing up at school board meetings? What are you doing? How's this? He basically disagreed with what the very memo that came from not just anybody in the FBI, but the counterterrorism unit. He said in that hearing that, oh, we're not treating parents as domestic terrorists as the school board letter which initiated all this stuff alleged. He said, no, we're not doing that. But the very day before he talks to us, before he answers in the way he did, we have this memo that goes out to the FBI agents around the country. He's talking about the threat tag and categorizing and labeling parents in this way. You know what it reminded me of? When I saw this information that we got from the whistleblower, when I saw this, it reminded me of what the IRS did 8, 9, 10 years ago when they had the BOLO list, the be on the lookout list. If you have groups who are using these terms, doing these things, we're going to examine them. We're not going to give them the tax exempt status they're applying for. That's exactly what it reminded of. They were spying on people, using the IRS to do it then. Now they're using the FBI, and this is as wrong as it gets.
Congressman, I want to turn to former Trump strategist Steve Bannon. He was indicted on 2 charges of contempt of Congress. Here's what he had to say about that yesterday going out of those that courtroom.
I'm telling you right now, this is going to be the misdemeanor from hell for Merrick Garland, Nancy Pelosi, and Joe Biden. We're going to go on the offense. Well, I'm never going to back down, and they took on the wrong guy this time.
No question about where Steve stands on that. Here's the thing that's interesting to me. In the wake of all this, you're warning of payback. You're saying if Republicans, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, you tell me if I'm wrong, that if Republicans gain control of the House, you know, all's fair when it comes to the Biden administration. Alan Dershowitz was on just a moment ago and said, hey, if I was Biden, he shouldn't have shown up. He should have made Congress go and do that. Go to court and get a declaratory judgment. I got it. But here's the thing that I think is interesting. I'm pretty convinced Republicans will take control of the House next cycle. Yeah. If that happens and a Jim Jordan is a chairman, are you worried that the Biden administration officials that you consistently seek to hold accountable will now use the same arguments to say we don't need to be responsive to Jim Jordan or anyone in the House?
Yeah, no, exactly. Look, what they're doing is they're destroying executive privilege. Not maybe with Bannon, there's some different arguments, but they're now talking about going after the former chief of staff to President Trump. I mean, the guy who is most close, who has the most candid conversations with the commander-in-chief. They're looking to destroy executive privilege for Mark Meadows. So if they go down that road, they cross this bridge with Bannon, and then they go after the chief of staff. Look, this is unprecedented territory. It's supposed to be handled in court, but if they go right past this and go to criminal contempt, as they did with Mr. Bannon, all I'm saying is if you're going to do this, if you're going to cross this bridge, well then, look, it's fair game as we go forward. I hope they don't go there, but if they do, I think the American people expect us to get answers to pretty important questions, like the fact that the FBI is spying on parents, for goodness sake. We need to get to the bottom of that, and if they're not going to comply, we're going to have to subpoena the documents, and then they still may not. Remember, never forget what happened. We had a bunch of information we wanted to get from the Obama-Biden administration. We had asked for documents. We'd subpoenaed documents. We held Eric Holder in contempt. But when President Trump got in there, in respect for the precedent of executive privilege, he didn't turn all that over to us. Even all the attacks to the Trump administration had to go through. He didn't turn that over. So they're going down a dangerous road. But if they do, what's fair for one is fair for the other.
Yep.
Congressman, yesterday we had KT McFarland on talking about the Russia collusion and the Steele dossier, and she brought up a really interesting point. She was talking about Jake Sullivan, and at the time, obviously, he was Hillary Clinton's foreign policy advisor. He was the one that was peddling the dossier, actually. But she pointed this out, that just so happens that his wife worked at the Justice Department. She also served as the counsel for the U.S. House Judiciary Committee and the House manager during the impeachment trial for President Trump. Is this being investigated or looked into at all?
Well, there's a whole host of things that are raised by the indictment of Mr. Danchenko and the indictment of Mr. Zussman. It goes all the way back to the Clinton campaign. But when you read through the 30-some page indictment of Mr. Danchenko, you get references in there to right to the Clinton campaign, to Mr. Sullivan, to this individual that's been identified as Mr. Dolan, right to the Clinton campaign. I think all that's fair game. The other person that comes up, frankly, is Fiona Hill, one of the key impeachment witnesses in 2019 for the Democrats. And she's the one who first put Christopher Steele and Mr. Danchenko together, and she was serving in the National Security Office in the White House, for goodness sake. So I think it raises a lot of questions. Here's what I know. It looks like Mr. Durham is going to go right to the source, which is the Clinton campaign, and well, he should. The big question I have is, how did the FBI not know this information they were being fed? How did they not know this was coming from the Clinton campaign and it was a bunch of garbage?
I want to, as we promised at the front, I feel like I've monopolized all the talk about books the last couple of weeks. You've got one coming out next week. Do what you said you would do. And the question I have for you is, do you think that most of your colleagues, especially in your own Republican conference, they do what they said they would do, or do they come to Washington and say, that was good on the campaign trail, and now I just need to have some fun?
I think for those who maybe haven't fought as hard as the American people would like, I think that's all changing because we're now in a whole different context, a whole different framework. The Democrat Party, controlled by the radical left, they don't like the country in the way you and I do, the way Lindsey, they don't. And they're trying to fundamentally change this nation in a way that is not good. We saw it play out in Virginia with what they were trying to do to parents, and we saw Americans stand up. So I think the Republican Party gets what's going on and is willing to fight for the things that the American family, the American people want us to fight for, because we've seen how bad it can get in just 10 months. How crazy it can get when Democrats control everything. So I think we're going to be united. I think we're going to do what we said we were going to do, fight for the things that matter, and hold Democrats accountable who've been doing these things so wrong.